the goal here is really to have a proper form of encourage a proper form of deconstruction, one that recognizes that the foundation that we have as Christians is strong. And you don't have to be a scholar or a critic or anything like that to think your way through the arguments and through the things that are lobbied against us as Christians. You don't need to think about these things in a necessarily academic way, to a deeply academic way, to be able to withstand these claims. Again, I'm going to have some academic terms here, some technical terms, and my goal here though isn't to just like throw a bunch of those out and to have you thinking like, this guy just Googled all these words recently, I have to Google all these words. What I want to do is present ways in which learning the Bible and our history will preserve you. That's my goal. I want you to be confident in your foundation and for your faith to be preserved against the darts of the world. So one thing I want to clear up off the bat is, what do we mean when we say Bible? What does Bible even mean? Our term Bible is a translation of a word that ultimately comes from Koine Greek, which is ta bibla, and it means books. And the Latin form of it, which is maybe even closer, is just bibla, which means book or books. So when we say Bible, you might have heard people say like, "Oh, the good book." The Bible literally means book. So the Holy Bible is the holy book. It's a declaration of what this thing is. Books plural to me makes maybe a little bit more sense, just because of recognizing the codex nature of the Bible, meaning that it's one book made up of a lot of smaller books and writings. So there's 66 books that make up the book, as it were. So that's what we're talking about when we say the Bible. We're talking about this compilation of writings that we have come to agree upon, which we'll touch on a little bit later. So one of the things you might hear is, it's archaic and it needs to be revised. The Bible is just too old to have anything to do with us. There's a fallacy here, an argumental one that was popularized and potentially coined by C.S. Lewis in his autobiography, or in an autobiographical work, that is called chronological snobbery. And what chronological snobbery means is an argument that the thinking, art, or science of an earlier time is inherently inferior to that's going on right now, simply because of its place in time, or the belief that a civilization, since we've advanced in certain areas, that people of the earlier eras were less intelligent. So one of my areas where I get really on top of people about this is like ancient aliens, and talking about how in the world did the Egyptians make the pyramids? Like, they had to have the help of aliens and all this different stuff, because how would they know the math, and how would they, they didn't have the technology to pull up all this stuff, and blah, 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 blah. And then you'll see a video that's like, oh, you can turn a like half-ton stone block on like a pebble, or like, oh, it took levers and pulleys and this many people to stand up an obelisk. And we know that they carved the obelisk in the floor of a granite thing. They didn't stack it. They carved it into the floor and then raised it after they carved it out of granite bedrock. So we're learning things about this, and it's like, because they were in the past doesn't mean that they were dumb. The Bible, in fact, speaks about God giving the craftsmen of Israel wisdom to make the materials that were required for the tabernacle. Remember, the tabernacle, also called the tent of meeting, is the place where God is going to dwell. I think that this is important to know what's behind the word wisdom when we call a person wise, when we say that person is wise. What we're getting at is that they're a skillful and knowledgeable person about life. That's what we're getting at. Life as a human and the human experience of life can be shaded in different ways, but is not affected generally and purely by scientific progression. The existence of atoms does not change the nature of this world and does not change the nature of the human experience. Atoms existed before we knew they were around, they existed after. We discover things, they do not change what is true about the human experience. Scientific progression is not a refutation of the claims that are found in Scripture. That would be misunderstanding the purpose of the Bible. The Bible is not a scientific a textbook like some people would try to make it seem. This is my issue with the kind of answers in Genesis crowd. Listen, if you believe that the world is made in 6 days or 6 billion days or years or whatever, you know what I'm trying to get at. I particularly don't really care. I think it tells me about your hermeneutic, the way that you read the Bible, but that is not essential. But my issue is we need to stop making the Bible into a textbook. It's not about that. The Bible is about how you live and about the nature of the world and the human experience. And that does not change regardless of any kind of scientific discovery.